2. Beachcombing. The sea has a mysterious appeal, and many people of all ages and walks of life enjoy walking along a beach. The sea is beautiful and peaceful when it is calm, but the beach can be most interesting after rough weather. Stormy seas tear away the holdfasts of many plants under the water, so that they and their associated animals are washed up on the beach by the big surf. This flotsam can give us an idea of what is floating in the ocean and living in the nearby sand flats and reefs. Flotsam is the remains of marine plants and animals that are washed up by the tide, whereas jetsam is debris washed up that resulted from human activities, such as rubbish or parts of wreckage. Exploring the strand line. Although flotsam is washed onto a beach by the waves, the most interesting beaches to beachcomb are not necessarily those with the biggest waves, the high-energy beaches. Often currents will bring in interesting items to the calmest beaches. The best time to explore the strand line is during a receding tide, when the flotsam is freshly deposited, preferably after a storm. The most interesting finds will be early in the morning before the other beachcombers have been. All the piles of dead plants and animals after a storm seem to be a sad loss of life, but they are part of the natural food web. The seaweed attracts small animals such as flies and sandhoppers that feed and help decompose the debris. You will notice the sandhoppers, small shrimp-like crustaceans, jumping about when you turn over a pile of weed. In turn, these and the animals washed up provide food for many of the beach birds such as the endangered hooded plover. The broken down organic material from the debris returns nutrients to the beach, which wash down into the sea, providing food for many other animals. String kelp. Brown seaweed such as this string kelp is commonly washed up on our beaches. It can be recognized by its long rope-like stems and air bladders at the base of the fronds. Large forests of string kelp are growing offshore in the cool waters of southern Australia and Tasmania. They are one of the fastest growing plants in the world, growing up to 50 centimetres a day, to a height of at least 30 metres up from the sea floor. As the name forest suggests, these plants provide a very important local habitat for many other plants and animals. The size and number of kelp beds around Tasmania have decreased over the past 100 years, and researchers are trying to find out the causes. Red seaweed. There are three main groups of seaweed: the greens, browns and reds. This is an example of one of the red seaweeds growing on a reef. The reds usually grow in deeper water than the greens and browns because they can survive at lower light levels. Tasmania has a rich diversity of red seaweeds, many of them still unidentified. The seaweeds plus the drifting phytoplankton are the primary producers of the sea, providing the basis of the food web in the ocean and most of the oxygen in our atmosphere. Therefore, the seaweeds, being the dominant large plants in the ocean, are important as a primary food source for many animals. Brown seaweed with hydroids. This slide illustrates that seaweed not only provides food for other animals, but also a habitat. Look closely at the fronds and holdfasts of many weeds in the strand line to see what they shelter or support. The colonial hydroid covering this seaweed used the fronds to reach up into the moving water, where tiny tentacles trapped even tinier plankton floating in the water. The tentacles are characteristic of all the animals in the group. They have special stinging cells which have a tiny dart that fires into its prey and injects poison. The darts can be strong enough to penetrate human skin and can cause an unpleasant swimmer's rash. Seagrass. Seagrass is another plant that grows on sand flats behind beaches, and so it is often washed up. It is a true grass. Like those on land, it actually has true roots and tiny flowers underwater. It can be distinguished by its very tough stems with prominent leaf scars, and leaves with short, narrow blades with 2 points on the tip. If you look carefully at the leaf blades, you will see that they usually have a pink coralline alga growing on them. Seagrass provides a very important marine habitat because it slows the water currents and provides shelter for juvenile fish and mollusks, in addition to helping the sediment to settle. It is threatened or dying out in many places due to increases in silt and nutrient in the water from erosion of the soil from the surrounding land, which cuts down the light that the plants need to grow. Jellyfish. These two jellyfish are commonly washed up on beaches during spring and summer. The translucent moon jellyfish, with 4 horseshoe-shaped purple gonads and very short stinging tentacles, is the most common, sometimes washed up in hundreds. The lion's mane jellyfish, a deep purple-brown colour with longer tentacles, is less common. However, it can grow to 1 metre across the bell with tentacles 10 metres long. Both drift in the ocean with the currents, fishing for their food using their stinging tentacles. The tentacles and stings are strong enough to kill large fish. The moon jellyfish is becoming a problem for fish farmers in Tasmanian estuaries because large numbers are washed up against their farm cage nets, blocking the flow of water, distressing and even killing the fish with their stings and mucus. Animal flotsam. This is a selection of animals or their remains that are commonly found in the strand line. The brown mass is not seaweed but a colony of tiny sea moss animals embedded in a soft skeleton. On the far right is a white lace coral, which is another colonial sea moss with a skeleton that looks like a piece of coral. 2 crab carapaces are often washed up. The brown hairy one belongs to the decorator crab that lives amongst seaweed, and the white one with 2 red spots comes from the surf crab that lives in the sand. There are 3 different sea eggs that are the tests from sea urchins that have lost their spines. The oval heart urchin lives buried in the sand on low-energy beaches, and the round species live in kelp or on rocky reefs. The doughboy scallop retains its colour and still has some of the sponge that normally covers it when it is alive. The vase sponge has lost all its colour but will still have a spongy feel. In the vase is a bunch of eggs, probably from a squid or cuttlefish, and beside is a small internal shell from a cuttlefish. Later slides will illustrate the shapes and colours of some of these animals when alive. Sponge garden. Sponges washed up on the beach lose their colours rapidly but retain their shape. As can be seen, when alive they are very brightly coloured and can be any colour of the rainbow. They can also be almost any shape. The same species may grow in a thin layer over surfaces in area of strong currents, but grow upright in deeper, calmer water. Sponges are the simplest of the multicellular animals, since they are little more than a collection of individual cells in a skeleton that forms a sieve. If broken up, each part will grow into another sponge. However, they also release male and female sex cells into the water to be fertilized and grow into new animals. They filter hundreds of litres of water a day, sieving out small plants and animals to eat. Very few other animals eat sponges because of the nasty poisons in their cells, as indicated by their bright colours. Sponges are not easy to identify because their colour and shape can vary in different habitats. A sea urchin. This is a large sea egg or urchin alive underwater with all its spines. It walks about on its hydraulic tube feet and spines, which can cause a nasty wound if they penetrate your skin. It has 5 strong teeth underneath, which it uses to graze seaweed. It is thought that large populations of this species may prevent young seaweed from recolonizing the rocks, and so cause urchin barrens, as seen along the coast of New South Wales. Unlike their relatives, sea stars, which can grow new arms or even a new body from a body part, urchins can only reproduce by fertilization of their sex cells. In Tasmania there is a small industry that collects certain species of sea urchins to harvest their ovaries or roe, which are a delicacy in some cultures. soft bryozoan and sea spider. This soft plant-like organism is one of the colonial soft moss animals or bryozoans. They are a dark brown when washed up, but when alive, bryozoans range in colour from white, yellow to orange, green and brown. Using a magnifying glass, you could see that the branches are made up of a colony of animals, each in its own horny casing. Each has an opening through which it extends tentacles to catch prey drifting past. Bryozoans are very fast-growing, so some species are a pest because they foul the bottom of boats. This species of bryozoan is host to this species of bright yellow sea spider, which feeds on it. Sea spiders have 8 legs, but are not true spiders, although they are related to them. They are unusual because their bodies are so small that their sex organs and some of their gut are in their legs. Lace coral. Fragments of lace corals are often washed up after storms. This is another colony of bryozoans, with each animal in its tiny calcareous compartment. The holes in the lace are actually windows between the animal compartments. The colony grows by adding more compartments. But new colonies are formed by fertilization of sex cells produced by specialized animals in the colony. Venerid and cockle shells. These are 2 of the most common shells found on the beach. The 2 almost circular and smooth shells with small beaks or umbones are the 2 valves of the blue-tinged Dosinia. These shells are very thick and strong. The shells with the distinct ribs and pink umbo belong to the thin-ribbed cockle. As the name suggests, the shell is thin and easily broken. Each pair of valves have characteristic small teeth that hinge them together. Both species live buried in the sand with a long siphon to the surface to draw in water to filter out their food and provide oxygen. More bivalves. This shows a variety of other shells commonly found on beaches. The almost circular white and orange shell is the striated dog cockle. The brown zigzag markings are variable. It often has a small hole drilled through the shell, indicating that it has been attacked by another mollusk. The smaller brown shell with fine zigzag stripes and ridges is the feathered venerid, while the larger white one is the frilled venerid. This is one of the prettiest Tasmanian shells. All live buried in the sand and feed on what they filter out of the water. Banded kelp shells. These tiny shells, up to 1.5 centimetres long, are often washed onto beaches in large numbers. They are popular with children because of the distinctive variety of colours and patterns, and can be made into necklaces. They live and feed in sand close to the shore. The violet snail. These delicate shells live in the open ocean. They create a raft of bubbles and float upside down on the surface of the water. The deep blue surface camouflages them from the birds flying above, and the white surface camouflages them from the fish below. They feed on the cells of the blue bottles and the by-the-wind sailors, so they are often washed up on the beach together. Ram's horn shell. You might be lucky to find this beautiful spiral shell with many chambers, about 3.5 centimetres in diameter. Although the shells are often washed up in large numbers in warmer waters, only a few whole animals have ever been found, and it has rarely been seen alive. The shell comes from inside the tail-light squid, which migrates daily between depths of 200 metres to 700 metres in the warmer oceans. The squid has a special light organ which is probably used to lure its prey. It is a living fossil because it is closely related to the fossils ammonoids that used to populate the seas at the time of the dinosaurs. Cuttlefish. Cuttle shells are a familiar sight on many beaches and often collected to provide caged birds with a source of calcium. The shell or gladius is the internal skeleton of a cuttlefish. There are several species that have slightly different shell shapes and colours. They are relatively common in southern waters, but few whole animals are washed up. They are weak swimmers, but rely on camouflage to sneak up on their prey and then capture it with 2 long tentacles. This animal is feeling threatened and is holding up its long tentacles, curled up in front in readiness to defend itself. It is flashing bold brown and white patterns across its body as a threat to display. It can also use sophisticated colour changes to produce waves of body colour for a mating dance. Sea tulips. These plant-like creatures are often washed up amongst the seaweed. They are animals called sea squirts, which feed by filtering water that they pump in one hole and out the other. Sea squirts are actually our closest invertebrate relatives. They have a larva like a tadpole with a primitive nerve cord but no backbone. The larva swims freely for a short time before settling onto a rock, standing on its head, losing its tail and becoming a filter bag on a long stalk. Shark and ray egg capsules. These curious objects may be found tangled in the seaweed. They are egg cases of the most primitive fish, rays and sharks. The black mermaid's purse was laid by a stingray-like skate, which lives on the edge of the reef, often half buried in the sand. The brown capsules were laid by a draft-board shark. The long tendrils were twisted around the base of weed to secure and camouflage it. The eggs may take up to a year to hatch, when a miniature adult will emerge. This shark is very common on the edge of the Tasmanian reefs. However, although it may grow to 1.5 meters long, it is harmless to people. The weedy sea dragon. Occasionally fish are washed up on the beach. Mostly the scavenging birds will clean them up quickly. But some fish have hard bony plates on the outside of their body which protect them. This beautiful fish lives amongst the kelp on semi-protected reefs, camouflaged by its colour pattern and leafy appendages. It is a weak swimmer because of its rigid body and tiny fins. Therefore it does not move very far from its home reef and is vulnerable to being washed away by storms. This family of fish is very unusual in the animal world, because the males brood the eggs for several weeks until they hatch out into miniature versions of adults. Sea dragon eggs are embedded in the skin under the father's tail. The Tasmanian Marine Naturalists Association is carrying out a survey of weedy sea dragons, so please report any found washed up on the beach to the TMNA, care of 102 Bathurst Street, Hobart, 7000.